Hey gang, I wanted to go ahead and do a quick video, try to keep it quick on my wrap up for SKBC Day 2 and everything that I kind of learned here, and there's a lot. I didn't get to do as much of it as I wanted to just because my body kind of gave out on me. That's a long-term goal we'll talk about later. But even from what I did get to do, I feel like I absorbed a lot. First off, just going through the fundamentals class with Peter, recovering a lot of real basic stuff that I think anybody who's ever tried to get a little bit good at this already knows about. But even in that, really discovering some things that I really could be doing better. For instance, Peter talked about how you really want to be choosing with a guard where your strength and your weaknesses are. I kind of realized that, we're talking about in the context of single blue, really all fighting, how being proactive is like a good bit better. I feel like I have a bad habit of wanting to be the reactive fighter, which makes me want to take neutral guards a whole lot more, where I feel like I'm in a good position to respond to anything or capitalize on anything that I see. And in my brain, that just seems like correct. Like, yeah, I want to be able to, do what I need to do or go where I need to go at a moment's notice. When really, I'm letting the other person dictate the first moves of those fights and then trying to outperform them or out-strategize them or out-hand speed them in the middle of all that. When really, if I just choose a guard that's, say, like really eccentrically, or a little eccentrically, like high or low or inside or outside, I already know what my strengths and weaknesses are, and then I can start focusing on directing my opponent where I want them to be, rather than just putting myself in a neutral point where I can react equally to anything my opponent does. So being just more proactive as a overall mindset, I feel like would be good for me. And the way that I can manifest that physically is by trying to choose those more proactive guards. Another class that I took was a center grip shield fighting class, and really that same concept applies there too. They talked about that as well. Really, like using your shield as a way to dictate where you want your strength to be. And I feel like people who see me fight or have fought me a whole lot know that I'll do occasionally a left foot forward guard where I'll lower my shield and I'll bring my hand up. And that is kind of a good example of that. I did it. I like that guard because I would describe it as like elusive or like hard to figure out. But really what I'm also doing, in the way that I think is better to describe it, is I'm really choosing what it is I want to focus on. I am cutting off the lower half of my body from attacks, and I'm focusing on just these top quadrants where I'm expecting you to swing. Because now that I know that I'm expecting you to swing high, I know how fast it is to bring my shield up and respond to something if needed. But still, I'm starting off from a position of giving you something that, like, pushing you in the way that I want, or I know that you're going to go by exposing myself in a certain location. Another thing that we really kind of talked about in that center grip class, a bit more about shot creation, the actual shield side of things, was because you have a center grip, you become much better at throwing dark on people, throwing dark sides, throwing money shots, going like up and like doing like dark side chops like I really like to do. And one of the things you can do to really make that more threatening is I really like to have like my hand up here, because again, my brain wants me to be somewhere in the middle so I'm not exposed anywhere. But instead of doing that, but lowering that hand down to like waist level, projecting that tip a little bit, and putting yourself basically already like halfway towards throwing under your shield or throwing for money or something. And it's pretty easy to get away with that because, one, you already know, again, you're being proactive. You know that you're opening yourself up to like this over here. And that's great, because if they throw that high cross, you can like very easily dark side and counter that high cross. If you do need to snap back up into guard, it is so much faster to do this and like recoil into guard than it is to, from this kind of guard, go down and throw money. And when you fight with 40-inch bats like I do, or I really, really like to recently, It is so easy to start throwing from like, I'm in guard, and maybe I like throw flat or something to start my motion, then I'll go for a dark side. It is so easy to let the momentum get carried away with, and it's hard to control it. Whereas if I'm already like nice down, a little bit more horizontal of a to the ground with my guard, it's very easy to pop under and get really like quick shots. It's really easy to come back and clinch up high if I need to. And I do want to touch on the 40-inch bat that I used this weekend. I used a 40-inch, 14-ounce bat, dag bat at SKBC, and did a lot better than expected. There were, people who were obviously much less experienced than me, all the way up to a few different warlords where I really feel like the crazy amount of range and extra weight on that weapon, it was very it was surprising. Now, that being said, I'm positive that if I fought any of them more than 5 to 10 times or whatever, maybe even less than that, they'd be able to adapt very quickly to that extra range and that extra heft, and be able to exploit the fact that they have a much faster weapon that's not really that, maybe you're like 4 inches shorter than what I'm using. But still, it seemed to surprise a lot of people, especially I feel like Amped Guard, the weapon length is really compressed into like a 2 to 3 inch window, and to have somebody who's like suddenly 4 inches to 6 inches using a longer, heavier weapon, all of a sudden your blocks aren't as good, they get blasted through, your shield's not high enough to block flat wrap suddenly because of that extra length and heft. People come into grind distance with you, they're not ready for how high you can throw over the top. So I think there is really something to fighting with a much longer weapon. The surprise factor is great. That's why I think that they're really great on the field. You're not going to have a ton of interactions over and over and over with the same person on the field, so you get to capitalize on that surprise factor a little bit. And maybe even in tournaments, I think that I would like to maybe try to scale down to like maybe 38 inches and see how that feels, and get something that's really crazy for like Amped Guard, like an Amped Guard sniper. Ferrix this weekend showed me one of their super long Amped Guard bats, which was ridiculous. Moving on from that, this video is already much longer than I wanted it to be. Let's see. So another thing about throwing the money shots that I really like to, throwing the dark sides that I really like to, I really will just usually throw it as a single shot when it is just so very easy to just like reach up, tap somebody's hand, and then throw. And that's like kind of level 1. Then level 2 would be doing things like tapping that person's hand, rising for like something like an off quadrant, like shoulder or something, then dropping back in. So I really want to start experimenting with that. I love a bunch of fakes. I love fakes and feints a ton. So I'm really looking forward to experimenting into that. It's very similar to how I will throw like shallow shoulder and flat wrap, or even like flat wrap and like super deep like skyhook wrap to like fuck with people's range perception. May start doing that with just like a short like beat, hand, hip, hand, hip, hand, hip. And that's bread and butter and like super in the wheelhouse of a ton of people. Maybe in my region I still might be able to get away with it a little bit more. So yeah, and then finally setting up all of my killing shots with more footwork, and fakes of course, but like footwork as well, especially against people who are more defensive opponents. And that is something that is really hard for me. As overweight as I am, it is very hard for me to take short, powerful steps. I can get there, but then stopping is very hard. And because of the work I've had done on my left knee, Scrat was my sparring partner for our footwork class for the majority of it, and he saw several times where I was just tired and I was in pain, and I would try to take the same steps with my left leg that I was with my right leg, and it would just buckle. And I found some ways to work around that, shortening my steps, things like that. Warlord DeVry gave some very good advice for like hefty dudes fighting, talking about loading steps, which is too complicated for me to get into right now, but I'll show you if you want to talk about it sometime. And so that really just all comes back to the fact that my body kind of gave up on me at this event before my willpower did. And the fact that footwork is so hard for me and caused me so much pain on Friday. it really kind of got me depressed for a few hours. Really kind of almost ruined my vacation there for a bit. And I had to come home and, or I had to come back to the hotel room and really talk to myself and really think about, I am, of course, extremely disappointed that I wasn't able to do everything that I wanted to do. It felt like all the work that I've been doing in the gym, all the work that I've been trying to eat a little bit better, drink a little bit less, just generally be a more healthy person, and still, I still have so far to go. I really had to reframe it, though, and think about how much worse off it would be if I hadn't have been doing those things. And so, yeah, that's really, it's really got to be probably my main focus is I just got to keep losing the weight so I can increase my mobility, I can increase my longevity, I can increase my durability. I've been doing a good job. I can do a better job. I really need to start watching what I eat, and hopefully by SKBC next year, if I'm so privileged to be able to be in a position where I can go, I'll be a good deal lighter and be able to be a more skilled combatant, just being a smaller, faster version of myself. So that's it. At my notes for this, very bottom, says lose weight. That's what we're going to work on. If you watched this to the end, thank you so much. And yeah, have a great night.